And we have 4 talks or strategy games. We have 4 talks in the session, 20 minutes each, and we have a 90-minute session, so we have 1 or 2 minutes extra at the end. The first talk is on nested research for adversarial real-time games, and Louis is going to give his presentation.
Thank you, Linda. Can you hear me all right? Yep, cool. So my name is Levi. I'm a professor at the Federal de Viçosa in Brazil, and this talk is going to be about a search algorithm that's called portfolio greedy search. You all should know this algorithm is really cool. If you don't know, don't worry. I'm going to explain it in detail, and then I'm going to show a problem with this algorithm and how to fix it. So don't worry about the title for now. We're going to get there. So real-time strategy games. This is Micro RTS, by far my favorite game for RTS research. And in this game, you control several units in real time. You have only a few milliseconds, and you're going to plan the next action for every single unit you're controlling. So it's very tough, very challenging. You're going to get the resources, train the units, and then battle the opponent. You win the game once you defeat the opponent, when you defeat all the units and the constructions of the other player. So this is very tough because you got this very large action space. So let's say you control all these 5 units, and then for each unit you can issue, say, 3 different actions, and we're going to call those the unit actions. So each unit has a bunch of actions, and then the player got to choose a action for every unit, and then we're going to call all these combinations, possible combinations, all the possible player action for the units. So just for you to have an idea how hard this can be. Let's say you have 8 units, you're controlling them, and let's say you have 4 units, and each unit has 8 different actions. So you got roughly 4,000 different player actions that you got to choose from, and only a few milliseconds. If you grow the number of units, say, to 50, then you have this horrible number that you see on the screen, and that's way too many different player actions you can evaluate before deciding which action to play. So one clever idea to deal with this very large action space is through what we call action abstractions. So the idea is that we're going to get some of these actions and we're going to throw them away. Just disregard them during planning, and now we have this smaller action space to deal with. But then the big question is how to define these action abstractions. How do we choose which actions we're going to throw away? So one very clever idea that comes from the algorithm I'm going to discuss here today, portfolio greedy search, is to use scripts to define action abstractions. So the idea is I'm going to have a set of scripts, and the scripts could be, for instance, just attack the closest unit, or train light units and then attack your opponent. Something very simple to encode in the game. And we're going to have a set of those. So let's say you have 3 different scripts, S1, S2, and S3. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to run these scripts for all the units that I'm controlling at a given state. And let's say script 1 is going to tell me to issue that action for the unit on the right. And then script 2 is going to say issue that action. And finally 3 is going to say issue that action. And then I do that for all the units that I control. I only have 2 units in this case. But then now I know which set of actions I should focus my search on. And then everything else, I'm just going to throw away. So the idea is that I'm going to reduce the number of actions that I'm going to account for during planning based on the domain knowledge given by a set of scripts. And so this is a very general idea. It was developed by Dave Churchill and Michael Burrow, and it has inspired many of us. So let's go back to the numbers. Initially we had those terrible numbers on the screen, and then once you throw out some of the unit actions, then it gets a little bit better. So if you have 4 units, then instead of dealing with 4,000 different player actions, now we're going to deal with 81. But if you grow the number of units you control, then you still have way too many player actions to deal with. So then we need to do some kind of clever search in order to find a good player action among all those player actions within a few milliseconds. And that's where PGS, or portfolio greedy search, comes into play. So I'm going to explain you this algorithm. So we're at a given state, and we're going to have the max player, we're a max player, and then the opponent is a min player. and the mean player is controlling 3 other units, the U primes that you see on the bottom. And then the idea is, now we're going to assign scripts from our portfolio to each one of these units. Our portfolio has 2 different scripts, S1 and S2. And we're going to go through different processes in the game, in the algorithm. We're going to start with the seeding process of the max player, and I'm going to show that that's on your left side, top left side. So for the mean player, we're going to have this default script. And let's say that's S1, and we're going to assign S1 to all the units of the mean player. And that's just saying, hey, every single unit of the mean player is going to run the action given by script 1. And then during the seeding process of the max player, we're going to try every single script for all the units of the max player. So we start with S1. So we'll assign S1 for everybody. And then we can run an evaluation function. Could be a neural network, could be a playout function. Do something about it. So let's say we get a -10. It's not looking very good for the max player. So we're going to keep trying other scripts from our portfolio, and the next one is going to be S2. So we assign S2 to everyone, and then we evaluate again. Let's say we get a +10. It's looking much better for the max player. We're going to stick with +10, and we're going to stick with S2 for all the units of the max player. So this is the seeding process of the max. Once we're done with this, we get through all the scripts in our portfolio. Then now we move on to the seeding process of the mean player. Well, we already tried S2 for the mean player, so now we're going to try, we already tried S1 for the mean player, now we'll try S2 for the mean player. That's what you see on the screen. So every U prime unit is going to be assigned the S2 script. And then now we can evaluate again how it's going to look like to play the game forward if all the units play according to script 2. And that's going to give us a -10, so it's looking better for the mean player. So the mean player wants to play with S2 instead of S1. Once we're done with the seeding process for the max and the mean player, now we're going to go through a step that's called the improvement step. And what we're going to do is we're going to get through every one of the units from the max player, and we're going to try different assignments of script 1. So just doing this greedy approach that if we see that by assigning S1 to the first unit it's better for the max player, then we're going to stick with it. So let's see how that does. We evaluate again, we get a +15, so that's looking much better for the max player. So unit 1 is definitely playing S1. And then we move for the second unit, and then we try a different script. So let's say we try S1, and then now we get a -15, that's terrible for the max player. So then we get back to S2. We move for the last unit, and then we try S1, and yay, that gives us a +20. That's the best we've seen so far. So that's definitely the assignment of scripts that we have for the max units. So one thing that we could do right now is just stop right here, and we already have an assignment of scripts for every single unit we control. And then we can just say, hey, unit 1, you're going to play the action given by S1. Unit 2, you're going to play the action given by S2. And unit 3, it's going to play the action given by S1. And then we're done with this. So just give back to the game the actions that each unit is going to issue, and then we just keep playing the game. But we could also do another step, which is the improvement step for the opponent. And that's called the response. So now we're trying to improve the script assignments for the mean units, and then we could go back to the max, and then improve again, improve the mean, improve the max. We could do this until we run out of time, and then eventually you have to give back the actions that each unit is going to issue in the game. The animation goes as far as this, but then now let's consider the following. We're going to have 2 different versions of this algorithm. So the first one, we're going to run the seeding process for the max player. We're going to run the seeding process for the mean player. We're going to run the improvement process for the max, improvement for the mean, and then we go back to the max again. So that's what we're going to do. Let's forget about the running time. We have all the time in the world, and we can run all these steps. We're going to call that the PGSR, and the R stands for the response, because we're running the response for the mean player. And now we're going to run a different version of the same algorithm, in which we're going to do the seeding process of the max player, the seeding process of the mean player, improvement of the max player, and that's all. So that's going to be PGS. So I want to see a quick is going to beat BGS, please raise your hand. Okay? Who thinks that BGS is going to beat BGSR in this game? Raise your hand, please. Okay, a few people. So that's what we call a pathological result. So if you run the experiment, then maybe I said both algorithms twice, I'm not sure. But if you run an experiment in which you run BGSR against BGS, then BGS is actually going to do much better. And that's what we call a pathological result, because we're providing more computational resources, more running time, we're running more steps, and still getting worse results. So we're going to introduce a new algorithm that's called nested greedy search that tries to fix this problem, and we're just going to call it NGS, which stands for nested greedy search. So we have a few pathological results. We're going to come back to this. So why we have observed the pathological results? I'll show you a very quick example of why this could be happening. We call the non-convergence problem. So let's say we run a few steps of the BGSR, and then we define that the mean player, so the mean player is choosing between E and F, and the max player in this tree is choosing between A, B, and C as well. So let's say we run BGS, and then mean player chooses F, and then the max player chooses A. And now we're going to go back and forth in the improvement steps. So if the mean player knows that the max player is playing A, whenever you run the improvement step, what is the right thing to do? Well, we should be playing then E. Because if the mean player plays E, it's going to guarantee a -1, and that's looking good for the mean player. But then we could go back and improve the script assignment for the max player, and if the max player knows that the mean player is going to play E, what is the right action for the max player to play? Well, we should play B, because by playing B, we're going to get a +2, and that's much better for the max player. But then we could go back again, and now the mean player is going to play F, because if the max player is playing B, playing F is just much better. It's going to give you -2. So we could go back and forth here pretty much forever, and we're never going to find which action, which is action C. Action C is the best action for the max player, because it's going to guarantee you a +1 no matter what the mean player does. So what we're going to do to fix this problem is to try to keep the same flavor for the new algorithm, nested greedy search. We're still going to do greedy search, but we're going to try to approximate what we call the mean max value of the tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to run BGS on the subtree rooted at this action A. And if you're lucky enough, and I say lucky enough because we're running a greedy search. So if you're lucky enough, then we're going to find that the best response of the mean player, if the max player plays A, is -2. And then we do the same for the next subtree. And then we find the value for that subtree. And let's say it's -2 because that's the best response for the mean player if the max player plays B. And we do the same for the subtree rooted at C. And that's going to give us the value of +1. And by looking at the values of each action, then we know that we have to play C. Because no matter what the mean player does, playing C is better for the max player. So we're keeping the same flavor of BGS, but the difference is, instead of going back and forth, improve max player, improve mean player, we're going to run BGS on subtrees of the game in order to approximate the mean max value of that subtree. So that's the whole idea of the algorithm. It's quite easy to fix, and it does fix as well the pathological results I mentioned to you. So I showed you a table full of numbers, but then I'm going to get you through these numbers. So we have different maps. These are games played in micro RTS, and on the top of it you have the smallest map, and then on the bottom you have the largest map. And then you have the percentage of victories of the row player against the column player. So the column algorithms, those are state-of-the-art algorithms we have for micro RTS. And then I want you to look at these columns. So in this column we have the average results of the 3 algorithms, BGS, BGS response, and NGS, which is our fix to the problem. So if you look at how much BGSR wins, then you can see that we definitely have pathological results. So if you allow you to compute a response to the mean player, and then you improve over that response, then you actually get worse results. But then if you do the NGS approach, in which you try to approximate the min-max value of each one of those subtrees, then it seems to be fixing the problem. But then you look at the size of the maps. As you get down on this table, then you get to the 24 by 24 map, then we're not winning as much with NGS as we did in the smaller maps. And that's because the algorithm is more expensive now. Now I have to run this greedy search for every single action of the max player. So it doesn't seem to scale too well. But at least now we understand why we have those pathological results with PGS when we run the response for the mean player. So I have a few conclusions here. If you learn PGS today, I'm happy already. It's definitely an algorithm that everybody should know about. We showed a problem that the algorithm has, and we showed how to fix it by approximating the min-max value during search through a greedy search with the same flavor that PGS had in its original paper. And we also showed, which is, for me, it's quite interesting, is that PGS was created to deal with combat scenarios that arise in real-time strategy games. And in this paper, we actually show that you can use PGS to play the entire game. And then there's a bunch of follow-up papers, which are called the cousins of PGS. And you could also use those algorithms to play entire games of real-time strategy games. So that's it. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take questions if you have any. Yeah, there's one question here.
So I'm wondering, so you are just investigating the problem of one turn of two players. What about like long-term effects?
Yeah, welcome to real-time strategy games. So we only have a few milliseconds. The best we can do is one ply look ahead. It would be nice if we could go deeper. So there are other algorithms that look into a deeper search tree. Like there's this alpha beta called AIIDE, which is alpha beta considering durations, which is fit for real-time strategy games. And this algorithm is going to try to grow this larger tree. But because the search tree is so large, usually you won't get very deep into the game. So that's why PGS works well. You have this idea of action abstractions on top of a greedy search that's going to do a one-ply look ahead. But you're definitely right. It would be nice if we could go deeper into the search tree.
Yeah, I think your work is definitely addressing some, like try to address some of the interesting things about adversarial planning. And maybe I would also suggest you also take a look at some the MCTS stuff when the color tree search.
Yeah, I love your question because Ruben is sitting right here and he's going to talk about Monte Carlo tree search with combinatorial arc bandits on top of action abstractions, asymmetric action abstractions. So I'm not going to answer that question. I'll leave it for Ruben later. Yeah, thank you. There's another question up there. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
What is the performance hit? Have you measured the performance of MGS to BGS 1.0?
BGS and MGS? MGS, sorry.
Yeah.
What is the difference?
What's the performance difference? How fast it exists? Have you measured?
Yeah, we did. I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but I could look at those for you.
Okay.
But it does make a difference. It's like going from linear on the size of the number of actions to quadratic. Because now we have to run the greedy search within the greedy search. So that could be expensive. There was another question there.
So you're saying, so the implication of what you're saying is that you would actually have better performance if you were playing against a person. Because you have time, because then you could have time to be doing the tree search while the other person is slowly making moves.
Yeah, so that's a trick that some of us use in real-time strategy games. Because you don't have a lot of time to do the planning, right? So one thing that you could do is you also don't act in every time step of the game. So you could be searching before you actually get to the time where you have to issue an action. So that's a trick that could be done, and it does help with the planning system. Did I answer your question?
Time for one more short question.
Yeah?
Have you tried to use any organization or anything? Because you're using Greek search, so you could add some heuristics on the search volume. I don't know, depending on like, you have depending on
Yeah, so the greedy search, it has worked quite well in this kind of scenario. But we're learning now that other search schemes, like the one that Ruben is going to talk about now, could actually be better. So it's not so clear when it's better, but it could be better. And we're going to learn a little bit more with Ruben's now.
Okay, let's thank the speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next talk is continuing the same line of research, answering the question that we had here. Action abstractions for combinatorial multi-armed tree search. And Ruben Moran is going to be giving the talk.
Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, guys. This sounds good? Everybody can hear me? Yeah? Okay. Today I'm talking about the action abstraction for combinatorial research. And Billy is my supervisor, or my advisor, you know. And this guy here is my co-workers and Mara's mentor as a professor here, as a supervisor too, in this project. And I used to use or remind some information on backgrounds provided by me because our guest games is really, really complex to like looking for all available actions when I have some action, agents in my state. In this situation, I have 5 agents, and let's consider I have, I don't know, so many actions for each agent. And if I perform some algorithm, some search here, sometimes it's really, really complicated to algorithm decide each action I need to pick or I need to choose for each one of these units. And the action abstraction, or I can say here scripts, can reduce the number of actions provided or the number of actions each unit can perform. In this situation, I have a number of actions that are like different or small in another one, and here's more easy to already choose or pick specific actions for each agent. But imagine in this situation, I have a number of units in a special position, or these units can have, I don't know, special resources like a superpower. And these units for me is really, really important, and I need to apply a fine point for these units. Why I need to do that? Because I need to do for provide like a special power or use this special power. And in this moment, the asymmetric action abstraction perform, I return with all available actions. And now, when I perform my algorithm search, what I have, my algorithm will look better for these 2 specific units. And why this is important? Here I label these units called strict units, that the units just have actions provided by scripts. And I call the other units unrestricted units. Why unrestricted units? Because we can look for all available actions. And why this is important? And what is the principal goal of this paper? Can we combine asymmetric action abstraction with naive sampling and non-count research? For understanding a little better what is naive sampling and CPS, I will introduce the concept about mood-armed band. What is mood-armed band? Let's suppose I have a bag of clothes, and I don't know why I buy some tickets to Vegas, and now I decide to replace these slot machines. And I can say these slot machines in this situation is called arms. And I need to decide which one of these arms I will invest my money. If I put my money in the first one, my reward will be 2 new coins. But I can explore another machine, another slot machine. And if I change my mind, now I have 3 coins. But one question or one challenge in this event is decide if I continue to explore different machines or if I exploit just one machine. And what does it mean? If I want to exploit, I will play this machine again and again and again, but I never know if I will gain more or less points. If I bring this idea for RTS games, I have these situations. is make movements, like I need to decide if my soldier will fishing or if my soldier will start moving or walk around or defend. But if I have more than just one unit, and I have 3, 4, 5, those units here, in this moment I have what I can call combinatorial multi-arm bands, and I need to decide in my bag of actions what action I will choose for each one of these units. And this moment, if I assign one action for each unit, I have one macro arm. And I can master, I can evaluate how good is this assignment. And I have one reward like 10. If I change again for another action, let's suppose the first soldier now has a sprint action, my reward will be different. And I have a new macro arm. And I can explore these different macro arms. But sometimes when you have like hundreds of units, it's really complicated to explore all of these macro arms. And I can use now AIIDE sample to help me to fix this problem. And what AIIDE brings for us? Imagine here, I have the strings, and all the strings has 3 actions in one. And when I call the AIIDE sample to help me in this process, the AIIDE sample will looking just for one unit. And in this situation, you choose the best action for each unit. And now, I just have one action. I will do this for the next unit. More, just one action. Take more, one action. And my sample here, or my macro arm here, will be composed by these 3 actions. And this make more easy the process of combining actions from each so many units. And when I try to combine AIIDE and CTS, and AIIDE and CTS, for example, for bring one example in this situation, I can have just two units, and I can call these units U1 and U2. Each one of these units can perform these actions in my space. In this moment, if I combine all actions, I have this number of macro arms, and I can do one grid like that. But the AIIDE and CTS consider these options unnecessary. In this moment, he knows this action exists, but any actions of any macro arm was explored. And for decide what's the one you will explore or exploit, it has a policy. In this situation, use epsilon grid, and the policy helps us to decide if you explore or if you explore. If my policy say, okay, explore, this policy will call AIIDE sampling, and then AIIDE sampling return one macro arm, and this macro arm is assigned in my tree. And now my tree has one macro arm. If I continue to explore, I have another macro arm, and I assign this macro arm in my tree, and now I have 2 options or 2 macro arms. And let's suppose my policy change for exploit. And in this moment, explorer, I will call again in AIIDE sample, it will say for me, okay, what's this second macro arm? And exploit the second macro arm. And now I can perform one evaluation function. I can use CNN or I can use layout. And I have this value now returning this value for this macro arm, and I know how good is this macro arm now. I can do this for another. If I continue to exploit, I will do that for another macro arm, and let's suppose the NCTS needs to return one action now. He will repeat the action you have the biggest value. In this case, the action in the value is 8. But imagine if I have, I don't know, 100 of units here, or 20 units here. The number of macro arms will grow very fast. And it's impossible to explore some of these macro arms. In this case, we suggest 3 algorithms to try to fix this problem. The first algorithm is called A1N. A1N because A stands for action abstraction, 1 is a reference number, and N stands for AIIDE sampling. And I call regular action abstraction. Because let's return and suppose this unit has three actions available. But for naive MCPS or A1N, I will remove these actions and I will call my scripts or manual scripts. And these scripts will provide action for each one of these units. I will call more scripts, and now I have the actions for each unit, and my naive MCPS can perform and can decide what is the best action for each one. But you provide another idea called AIIDE, and it's called restricted asymmetric action abstraction. And the difference here is because I have two unit groups. I have combat unit groups and I have economy-related unit groups. And I have two groups of scripts too. The first group of scripts will provide action for economy-related units. And in this situation, you don't provide any action for the combat units. And when I call the second group of scripts, I have actions for this combat unit. And now I can perform the naive MCPS, and the naive MCPS will consider these actions. Why I call restricted asymmetric? Because the combat units and the economy units has different groups of scripts, and for us this is called asymmetric. And the last algorithm is called asymmetric action abstraction naive MCPS. In this situation, I have one special strategy. What does it mean about special strategy? This strategy will look at all units in my state and follow some behaviors. I call these behaviors. You will choose specific units. You call the non-restricted units because it has superpowers. And in this situation, you provide all available actions for those units. And I will call again my scripts. And the scripts will provide actions for another units called restricted units. These want us to equal results to prove that our technique really works. Here is our baseline in this situation of an MCPS. And an MCPS has around 200 maps, around 200 maps. This test is performed in a round-robin test, and we run that in 8 maps. But now, if I look for the first idea, A1M, this number of results is 3 times better. A2M, a little bit better than the other one. Probably I need to pay more attention to the combat actions and combat scripts. And the A3M is the winner in this situation, in this test. This year you have the micro-RTS AI competition, and A3M was tested in this competition, and we achieved the 3rd position. Here I have the TMF. The TMF is a modern competition, and in recent tests you try to combine the idea in TMF with A3M, and now he is the best algorithm we haven't seen. And probably you'll put more attention in this algorithm. If someone wants to understand a little bit better the TMF, you can try to talk to me or can look for this paper. But this paper is the next year. And what is the message here? You prove it is possible to combine main sampling, NCPS, and action abstraction. And this way, this new technique can both perform NCPS and can also perform ordered state of your algorithms. And okay, thank you, and a special thanks here, AIIDE, for the financial support, and you helped me to stay here today. Thank you so much. Questions?
So thanks for the talk, very cool. How, so
this situation in 8 maps was maps in the same scale as the StarCraft. And like I had 100 milliseconds to thinking about, and when I applied it between action scripts and this asymmetric action set, it's continued to scale very, very well. But it's like, why did it scale very, very well? Because I continue to search it during each decision point. What does it mean? If I need to provide actions, I will search and provide these actions. But if I can't provide any action in this specific decision point, I will do my search, and this will help me in the next moment when I need to provide action. And this allows me to scale in big maps, and like it continues to work, the algorithm. But yeah, the problem here, if I put too many scripts in the same algorithm, this algorithm, I start to lose the quality of the results. And the number of algorithms here needs to be around 2 or 3. That's the problem. And the number of units I need to control is a little bit like not so good. Sometimes it's 2 or 3.
So the micro RTS, maybe it's not a very fair name with respect to the size of the game.
Right.
So the number of actions you could have at a given state could be gigantic, like more than the number of atoms you have in the observable universe. So it's something so huge that micro comes only from maybe the features of the game, but once you start playing the game and you have huge maps, it could be as large as you want, then the game becomes super hard. And for applying, say, to StarCraft, then the problem would be having a forward model. So I think that's the main difference. And micro RTS allows us to have this forward model and then do planning within this domain.
We have time for a couple more questions. No, I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, obviously you're making a ton of different abstractions here, but I'm wondering if you had thought about the theoretical question of bounding the performance. So for instance, bounding the performance relative, not to fully optimal, but relative to any one script or something like this.
Can you repeat, Nathan, please?
Have you thought about, like, how good or how bad could your performance be by it sort of applies to both papers.
Yeah.
These sort of abstractions and combining things in this way.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Maybe make sure you got your mic. So the question is, how's that going to affect the value of the game, right? You're throwing away some of the actions, and then you could have, and then you could have more value for the game just because you're throwing away some information. It's really hard to say how much that's going to affect. In general, we can just say the more you have, the better you can do in theory. But the problem is you just don't have enough time to evaluate all the actions. And you usually do much worse if you account for more actions to research. So in general, it's really good to throw away. And it should be careful while throwing away information. But having bounds, that's definitely an open question.
Like external regret or internal regret, like I was wondering if any of those measures would have any applicability.
Yeah, for having bounds, I'm not sure. Because you have no idea how bad or how well you can do by playing an action and then looking into, I don't know, playing in into the game. You would have to look at that action and then bring those values back. Unless you have bounds on the value of the actions, then maybe you can try to derive some bounds. But otherwise, it's just hopeless, I guess.
Okay, any other questions?
What's your evaluation function? Do you evaluate this?
Here you are looking at using payouts. In this situation, you have like a random BSAI, and I take the action applied to station and call this playout evaluation for one number of future steps, and after this number of future steps, I evaluation is zero. But only within the MCTS, because sometimes you're looking for the same macro more than one time in this, we will like you have an average value in each one of this macro
flexible search horizon, and the talk is going to be given by Henry Beyer, and this is going to show you who's working.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my talk on evolutionary MCDS or GMCDS with flexible search horizons. So what is awesome from games in AI? It's about an algorithm that brings together tree search and evolution, and I'm quite excited about that for two reasons. First, from the point of view of games, it's a promising new way of playing turn-based games with very complex turns, such as a lot of strategy and tactics-based games. And it has possibilities to generalize to other types of games as well. And second, from the point of view of AI, it's a promising new way of doing search that combines features of MCDS on the one hand and evolutionary algorithms on the other hand, and opens quite interesting new connections between those two. We've introduced the MCDS at this year's AIIDE conference, and today we're going to fix one of its major weaknesses, namely that it kind of ignores the opponent. So let me jump right with some motivation. We're looking at the problem of how to play games where players take turns, and where they don't just do one thing per turn, as they might in chess or Go, for example, but where every single turn consists of a whole sequence of things, the sequence of the coming actions that I symbolize these symbols. As board game examples, Arena falls into this category, or Risk on PC, for example. XCOM, some of these games, Heroes of Might and Magic, or Into the Breach, the recent indie game hit, or of course Civilization, to name an all-time classic. Or Battlefield Luca, to name a mobile game. They all have a mechanic of doing several things per turn, such as, for example, moving several units. Multi-action turn-based games are really quite common. But how good are the AIIDE games like that? Who's played Civilization here? Hands up. Okay, and who was impressed by the cleverness of the AI a lot? Yeah, exactly. So there's a real challenge here, even in such classic turn-based games, simply because individual turns can be very, very complex. So how do you write an AI that finds good turns in a game like this? This is where I usually explain the entire previous work and how our baselines kind of cover the space of existing approaches, well, not the entire previous work, but a lot of it. So today I have only around 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to skip over a lot of details, but you can find them all in our 8-paper course as well as these two. So we could reasonably try to build a search tree where one level corresponds to one atomic action. So the first level of the tree would then pick the first action we're going to do, the second level would be the second action we're going to do, and so on, until we have the complete sequence that we need for our turn. Our baseline number one searches such a tree and is called greedy action. That's a very simple greedy action by action search. Doesn't do any looking, just one flash. And our baseline number two searches the same kind of tree, but with a tailor-made MCDS variant. This MCDS variant is called non-exploring because in the hope of growing deep enough trees, the exploration factor is simply set to 0 here. Then there's our baseline number 3 called bridge burning MCDS. This MCDS variant forces the tree to spend equal time on optimizing each action. For each action, it searches for a while, then commits to the best action found, cuts all alternative actions off the tree, moving on to the next action. There are still some problems with all of these vanilla MCDS approaches, though, namely that decisions on earlier actions can influence later actions, but not vice versa. So there are dependencies between these actions that are not all created equal, so to speak. And this is why in previous work, an evolutionary algorithm has been proposed as well. The online evolutionary planning algorithm, or OEP, involves a population of possible next turns, complete with crossover, mutation, and survival of the fittest, all these beautiful things. And this evolutionary approach, other than vanilla MCDS, optimizes each action equally and simultaneously, because it doesn't use discretion. So it basically turns the planning problem of finding a good action sequence, a good next turn, into an optimization problem. In our CAG paper this year, we've actually improved several parts of vanilla OEP from the literature and turned it into our baseline number 4, and strongest competitor, we call it greedy OEP. And that brings us to baseline number 5, which is the state of the art at the moment, and the algorithm vanilla MCS baseline search, the classic MCS tree going into the future, time step by time step, action by action. This, however, see well enough, is not a tree that evolutionary MCS searches. Instead of starting from an empty term in the root, EMCS starts from a complete action sequence, a complete term, just like the genome in online evolutionary planning, for example. And instead of growing a tree that adds one action to the current sequence with every edge, EMCS grows a tree that mutates the current sequence with every edge, using an evolutionary mutation operator. And at any leaf node, EMCS can simply apply the action sequence in the leaf node to the current state, evaluate and backpropagate. So we don't need rollouts. So EMCS uses a mutation operator for its branches taken from an evolutionary algorithm, in this case OEP. But it doesn't apply those mutations randomly like an evolutionary algorithm does. Instead, it can choose exactly which action in the sequence to mutate next and how exactly to mutate it. So while OEP was set between the planning of an action sequence from a planning problem into an optimization problem, EMCS kind of takes the evolutionary optimization of the sequence and turns it back into a planning problem. EMCS systematically explores the mutation landscape, which means that EMCS gives evolution the benefit of looking at it. The two questions still have to be answered. To fully flesh out this algorithm, the first one is where does the root sequence come from? And for that, we have a root initialization policy, which we can apply. In this case, we use a simple existing AI with the action AI to do that. We can also do it manually. And the second question is, what happens if we apply a mutation and it results in an illegal action sequence? And for that, we have a repair policy, which we can apply. And for simplicity, we simply use the greedy action AI for this again. And this means we have our 5 baselines together now. Greedy action, non-exploring MCTS, bridge burning MCTS, greedy OP, and vanilla MCTS. More or less, this is the increasing order string. So far, so good. So what exactly is the problem that we're tackling today? Well, it's one of the most obvious limitations of both MCTS as well as its predecessors, so to speak, OP. They both optimize only the current turn of the player to move. They never explicitly look at what the opponent might do next, and this short-sightedness is, of course, a major weakness. So how can we begin to fix that? Our contribution in this paper is actually very simple. We're giving EMCTS a deeper search horizon, a flexible search horizon, with the help of a simple opponent model. So remember that EMCTS already uses 2 internal policies. Phi for initialization, just like an evolutionary algorithm, also needs to initialize the population, and psi for repairs in the tree, in case the mutation goes a little bit wrong. So in order to include a simple model of the opponent here, we now take our EMCTS genomes, as seen on the top here, and allow them to extend into our opponent's turn, or even beyond that, multiple turns, as seen at the bottom, as far as we want. And we generate all of the opponent actions necessary to fill those genomes with the help of a simple and fast opponent model called policy pi. In this paper, we're going to use greedy action AI for this as well, for simplicity. Our own actions, here with gray background, are all going to be optimized by EMCTS, but our opponent's actions, here with the white background, are simply generated by pi, static policy pi, whenever we need it. So in the tree of flexible horizon EMCTS, or FH EMCTS, I don't know how to avoid these monsters, abbreviations, we now use the greedy action AI in 3 places. As phi for the root, as psi for repairs, and as pi for generating all opponent actions that you need on the fly. There's also a second change we've made for FHMCS, and that is simply speeding up these behavior models phi, psi, pi through various algorithmic tricks. We explain this in our paper, and we will later separate the effect of these speed-ups from the effect of the longer search horizons themselves. So let's have a very quick look at our testing. We're going to be playing a game called Hero AI Academy, implemented by Citizen, the game that online evolutionary planning was developed for. This is a turn-based tactics game where 2 players, red and blue, try to use various different units and items and spells to destroy each other's units and precious crystals. I can't go into the rules in detail here, but let me just highlight one thing of this game. In Hero AI Academy, each player gets the number of action points each turn, and the action point can then be used for any one atomic action. These can all be actions with different units, but you can also spend any number of action points you want on the same units. By modifying the number of these action points per turn from 5 to 10 or 15, now we can very easily scale up the difficulty of the search program in our experiments a little bit. But just to make this clear, EMCDS is not relying on having action points. It would apply this as well if every unit always moved once per turn, or even if all units moved simultaneously, or even if we were searching over something more abstract than atomic actions, but we don't have time for that much later. And now we're ready to look at some experimental results. The time limit in all experiments here was 1 second per turn, and we scaled up the program complexity in all experiments from 2 actions per turn to 15 actions per turn. There were 3 sets of experiments that I'm going to quickly summarize here. In the first set of experiments, we determined how long should these genomes ideally be now that they have a flexible length. How far should we ideally look into the future? And summarizing all this here for you, we can see that searches going much deeper than 1 turn were most successful for relatively short turns, of course, at the left here. And the table, while at the longest best turns, it's best not to search any deeper than the current turn, which is at the right of this table. These longer turns are so complex that you don't want to risk missing a good current turn by spending any search time on actions beyond that, at least if you have only 1 second. But many use fast behavior models at AIIDE still significantly outperformed vanilla EMCDS at all actions per turn, at all turn lengths. And then in the second set of experiments we asked, well, if both flexible search horizons are great and fast behavior models, fast and pi, also great, then how much improvement comes from either factor alone? And we tested that, we separated that out. And our results here show that the improved behavior models, with the win rate in blue here, are most useful with longer turns because those require many more calls to the phi-sign hypotheses. And the flexible search horizons, however, with win rate in red here, are most valuable in shorter turns because they can afford to search pretty far beyond the current turn, even in only 1 second. With long turns, that's just too risky. And the black line shows the combined effect, so the performance of full FH-EMCDS versus unenhanced vanilla EMCDS as we proposed it as AIIDE this year. And in the third set of experiments, we then finally tested FH-EMCDS against all those baselines that I mentioned before in order to see how effective is it overall, and it consistently and significantly outperformed all baselines at all tested turn lengths. Our win rates are well above the 50% line across the board, as you can see here. One interesting detail here is that the greedy action AI itself performs pretty poorly. You can see all the way at the top, so that means we win basically all games against it. And this shows that the behavior models phi, sin, pi do not have to be very good as standalone players to make a pretty good initialization and compare policies and opponent policies. So let me conclude and mention a few interesting directions to this research. In future work, we could test this algorithm a bit more with different evaluation functions and different phi-sign time policies. In particular, it would be nice to have automatically learned ones and modify factors. FH-EMCDS should also be applied to other games to see how it affects their challenges, which could include things like indeterminism, partial searchability, multiple players, non-atomic actions, many more. So I'm currently hoping to apply EMCDS better to Tokyo-Next, mobile turn-based strategy game, where we might have to do, for example, some machine learning first, because there's no evaluation function given. Furthermore, FH-EMCDS could be generalized to other problems, genome finding action sequences, just like it was done with OEP as well. Our genomes don't have to consist of atomic actions. OEP has, for example, been applied to RTS games, including other things in its genomes. In this case that you see at the bottom of the slide, the genomes were candidate build orders, and what you see at the top of the slide, there the genomes were sets of micromanagement scripts to control units in battle, and to all of this we apply EMCDS very well. And last but not least, I'd really like to explore evolutionary algorithms and local search algorithms more, and relate them to EMCDS, because I believe that there is a lot of potential in the idea of seeing EMCDS as evolution with a look ahead. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
questions?
You mentioned when you're deciding the starting state for the search, you have some greedy sequence. How do you decide the initial horizon, like how many actions you put in the sequence?
Yeah, this relates to the first test, experiments I described here. So basically, in this experiment, we look at what you see in the first row here is different variants of the game with different complexity. And what you see in the second row is which genome length or which search horizon performed best at that level of complexity. And at the bottom, you see how well it performed in terms of win rate. So I summarize this by saying, when you have very short turns, you want to go a lot beyond those turns. When you have very long turns, especially if you don't have much time to search, you don't want to go very far beyond. That's the basic rule, and if you want to know it precisely, then I don't think you get around doing this tuning and figuring out what's the best length for your game. Yeah?
So the size of the genome, do you actually see that as part of the evolution, or is something that you trick into the genetic algorithm?
That's a very interesting question. We have not made any progress of the evolution itself part of the evolution, part of the genome. So the genomes only include future atomic actions that we're going to do in our next term. So the parameters like what's the search horizon are at the moment still static. But I know that in evolutionary computation they're quite often not, and search parameters are evolved themselves. So that would be an interesting future direction. Dave?
The actions per turn, is that how in the actual game it varies? Because, for
Yes.
example, some games, maybe 5 is AP, makes the game well balanced, 15 is just craziness or something like that. Can you explain what that really means?
Yes, this is part of the rules of the game. So that's the game itself. The standard version of Hero AI Academy and the version for which it's kind of balanced and fun to play has 5 actions per turn. And so in all previous work, as well as in Neil's Systems' previous work, we wanted to know a little bit, well, what if the game is more complex, what if there's more going on per turn? So we tweaked the rules to allow 10 actions. It makes sense up to 15. It's not fun anymore with 20, because then the game is just over too quickly, and the first mover advantage is too high. And so I left that out. I scaled it up to 15 because it was still relatively balanced and relatively playable. But if you want to scale it up to 100 things per turn, then we need a different game.
I have a question. Your tree, what are you using to evaluate a state at the end of the sequence of actions that you have in your genome?
Good question. What are we using to evaluate, well, the linear evaluation function? That's what we also needed in, well, all the other phases, the vanilla MCS variance, evaluating your individuals in online evolutionary planning. Every time you take the current state of the game, you apply your proposed sequence to it, and then you see, well, how well did that turn out for me, right? I think Neil's System has done some experiments replacing those evaluation functions with rollouts. Didn't work out that well. And that's also why I mentioned that applying this to commercial games, such as this beautiful one, would require getting that evaluation function first. Yeah. So it's a pretty simple one. In Hero AI Academy, it just looks at material balance. Basically, it doesn't even look at positioning of the units as far as I know, except for some special squares that give you special bonuses, so they make the units stronger. So I've started doing experiments also with neural networks as alternative to Hero AI Academy evaluation functions, but I don't have good results for it.
Do you have any sense of what the impact of the strength of that evaluation function has on all of your algorithms here?
That's a good one. Well, I suspect, as in many other cases, that MCPS is pretty tolerant when it comes to having might well be that AMCPS is a bit less tolerant than vanilla AMCPS, vanilla MCPS. So if you want to introduce things like noise to your evaluation function and check for robustness, that would be another feature or something.
Okay, let's thank the speaker.
Good. Okay, so the last talk in this session is POMCP with human preferences, and so let's just begin. And Nina Dobre is going to be giving the talk.
Thank you. Hello everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk. You can hear me okay? Yep. Okay, so right, so the questions that I'm trying to address are how can we handle increasingly complex games, and how can we do this when we face a low resource scenario in terms of the amount of data that we have available to learn from, and is it possible to actually train agents that will challenge the state-of-the-art agents or challenge human players in this situation? And I base the methods that I showed here on two intuitions. One of them is that there is a structure in the game that we should exploit to improve the learning ability of the algorithm. And the second one is that there is a bias in the data that comes in from the game rules, essentially. So players spend more time in certain phases of the game, and we should account for that when we learn from data. So the environment that I'm looking at is Settlers of Catan. I hope everyone knows the rules of the game. So unfortunately, I don't have the time to explain them. But if you're interested, you should visit the website. This image, you can see, is the interface that we're using for running agent simulations. It can also be used to run human versus agent games. And what I want to insist on is the complexity of the game. And I chose to compare it to Go, because it's still fresh in our minds. And as you can see from the tables here, it's a completely different learning problem that we're facing here. We have stochasticity, we have partial observability, we have the branching factor is slightly smaller. However, if we perform random sampling, we'll end up with a massive tree in the depth, mainly because of the trading behavior that is encountered in the game. The action space is also much larger. Of course, it's not the size of RTS games, but nonetheless, it is massive and it creates a lot of problems. However, it also gives us an ability to structure the game since these actions can be easily clustered into types. This is actually mentioned in the game rules as well. Players have to place settlements, cities, or roads. They can trade, they can buy development cards, play development cards, and then action specifics will be the coordinates on the board that you would have to place these pieces or what resources to trade. The trades are reduced to 1-for-1 and 2-for-1 resources, mainly because composing these you can end up with a lot of other trades, and also because the baseline agents cannot handle anything in addition to this. The numbers that you see on this table are with this multiplication. Okay, so in order to address this problem, we have an agent that combines online planning with offline learning, and firstly I'm going to focus on the online planning aspects. We have a HomeDB. The environment can be modeled as a HomeDB. Obviously, given the numbers that you've seen, we cannot have an exact solution to it, so we revert to methods that sample, that perform sampling. One of them is partially observable Monte Carlo planning. However, the original method was proposed for a single agent environment, and we're facing a multiplayer situation. This can be done by taking into account that the other agents have the same name. That's what the decoupled DCT does. We also have to take into account that there is this notion of action legality in the game. This means that players can only do things depending on what resources they have in their hand, for example, what development cards they have in their hand. So they're limited in what they can do, but they know this based on what they can observe. So the player always knows beforehand what they can and cannot do. Executing illegal actions is actually a bad idea because you will inform the opponent of what you have or you do not have. The other modification that we make to the algorithm is that we don't use a particle filter. That's made a belief because we can, given game rules, we can create factor representation of the game, and that gives us you an example in Citizen Catan to make your connection to this tree. So if you follow my mouse, because I don't have a pointer, in this node there's the current player proposes the trade, and then the next person to execute, the next player decides to reject the offer. We don't know why the person rejected the offer. It could be because they don't have the resources. It could be because they don't want to trade with us, or they're keeping the resources for something else. And therefore, we cannot update our belief, which means that this belief state is essentially the same one as in here. Of course, there are other situations. For example, actions have orthogonal effects on the belief, and if these are executed in sequences, this also ends up, you also end up in the same belief state. You cannot do this using the history. Another modification that I want to mention is the fact that we say we're doing fully observable rollouts. We don't give the agents the ability to see what the state is. We only need the fully observable state in order to enumerate what the legal actions are for that agent. Otherwise, we won't place a risk in that. So, as I mentioned, I want to combine this with an offline learning approach, and I use UCD, which is the equation you see here. This is exactly what has been done in AlphaGo. The only modification that we make is that we use a masking function, which just eliminates the actions that are illegal. This is provided by the game model. What I have suggested originally is to exploit the structure in the game. As I mentioned earlier, actions can be clustered into types, and this clustering will reveal the fact that certain types are more common than others, will reveal the fact that when multiple types are common, some of them will have more possibilities than others, and this will essentially, if you just run an algorithm that does random sampling without taking this into account, it will be very biased towards the more common options. To introduce this in MCTS, we can, possibly we can easily do this in the rollout phase by just breaking the algorithm into two-stage sampling process. First, we sample the action types, followed by sampling the action description, given the type that was chosen. And we can also learn the parameters of these new policies, and that will create a more expressive model. And I will show this in the next section and I'll show how we learn those parameters in the next section. So we have two methods that we use to learn from our very sparse corpus of humans playing the game. One of them is a feed-forward neural network, which provides you with a distribution over the set of actions that you have available given the current state. And the second one is extracting action type preferences. This model provides you with a distribution in the abstract version of the game, in the sense that it provides you a distribution over the action types given the current state. I don't have the time to describe the neural network. What I want to mention is that we do inform the neural network of what actions are legal given the current state. And if you're interested, you can have a look at the paper submitted that we have accepted in AIIDE Spring Symposium 2017. However, I want to insist on the simple method, which uses maximum likelihood estimation to learn the distribution over the action types, which takes into account the legality of the types, first of all. So the first equation here is counting how often an action of a specific type was executed in the corpus, given that action type was legal. I refer to this actually as the unconditioned policy. This is why I have a U attached to it, mainly because there's an additional intuition that you can, additional thing that you can account for. Players may do with what they have available, so they make a lot of compromises. To account for this aspect, we essentially condition this computation on what other action types were available. This is what this function does, and we just count that condition instead of if just the action was legal. These two equations provide two set of preferences, two different preferences. One of them says how much the player prefers action A over non-executing action A, given that A is legal, while the second one shows, sorry, is it the microphone on?
I think it's on.
Yeah. Can you
Did I?
is the button on it on?
It might be out of battery, I don't know.
Yeah, hold on.
Hello?
Oh, that was good.
Okay, sorry. I have no idea how long ago it was off, so I hope you guys heard me. What I was saying here on the slide is that the unconditioned policy learns preferences of the type of without touching anything.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, okay. Given this null hypothesis, using a t-test and a p-value less than 0.01, this means that the results have to be at least 2.5% different than the baseline performance to consider the agent significantly different than the agents.
Oh yeah, the matters.
Okay, sure.
I'll fix this.
Okay, as a baseline agent, we have the stack agent, which is a rule-based implementation. This is an open source agent that is the state-of-the-art agent. And we also show some results using the performance normalization studies. First, I want to focus on how the conditions and performance over the unconditioned policy versus the unconditioned policy. And this is only informing the rollout phase of the algorithm. If you look at the bottom row, the conditioned agent defeats all the other agents significantly. What is interesting is that the unconditioned doesn't perform better than the uniform one. But however, what we observed in these matches is that the uniform distribution over action types is sufficient to pose a challenge to the conditioned policy. This is very similar to the rock, paper, scissors effect that we observed in StarCraft. So I'm going to talk about this in a little bit because I observed it in the following experiment as well. So in here, I am taking the Ponsky algorithm that I described earlier, and the original algorithm, the baseline algorithm uses uniform distribution in the bias both the tree phase and the rollout phase, and then I'm combining it with the neural network in the tree phase. I cannot use the neural network in the rollouts as it would be too expensive. And then I'm also comparing with a combination with the condition type preference, which only informs the tree phase of the algorithm. And finally, the bottom agent is the one that uses the condition preference in both the tree phase and the rollout phase of the algorithm. As you can see, again, the bottom row indicates that our agent is able to defeat all the other agents. So any modification, every single modification improves the performance. Interestingly, it actually made the algorithm even weaker against the POC agent with just a uniform prior. Of course, if you look at these, how much our agent defeats the POC agent and how much the POC agent defeats our agent, there is a clear difference, 47% versus 31%. So our agent is still significantly stronger. However, it forces us to think that we should, as a future researcher, we should look at a multi-agent perspective. And what I mean by this, we should be accounting for the other player types. In order to do this, you can have a set of hypothesized types, and you just update this based on history or based on what you observe the agents are doing. And you can use this in the sampling to inform the search of what the agents are more likely to do. Okay, conclusion. What we created is the state-of-the-art agent at the moment in an open source version of Settlers of Catan. What I wanted to highlight is that you can use simple methods and you can still improve them if you account for the fact that you can exploit the structure of the game. At the same time, you should account for the bias that you see in the data. Now, as future work, as I mentioned, the most promising area to look into is a multi-agent perspective. However, it would be nice to evaluate our agents against human players, which we're unable to do due to games taking about 2 hours to complete. But in order to do this, we should look a little bit more into the trading behavior of the agent, since the agent is quite eager to trade, and that may be exploited by a human player. Okay, I have 3 weeks to go, but I want to be honest with you. I was late to the party, so I didn't submit it for the artifact evaluation. Thank you, and if you have any questions, you can ask.
So you said you use your types to define the actions for the playouts. Or do you use within the tree as well?
In the tree as well, but
Okay.
only by modifying, only by learning over these types of distribution, which you can then use it to inform the actual action descriptions and for the lower level actions in the tree. So it's only used during the learning; it's not used in the actual tree.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And before they agree on a trade, they have to undergo a negotiation procedure where they make offers and they can make counter offers or reject and accept. So this is the trading that I'm referring to.
Do you limit that? Like, do they just go through all permutations?
Yeah, all permutation, 1-for-1 and 2-for-1, including two resources that are different. So they can trade unlimited. However, we observe that our agent is very eager, so we do limit our agent to three offers per turn. And we inform this in the forward sampling as well. Yeah.
So the idea of using the types was to encode the preferences, or because you had this feeling that the types could help learning anyways?
So the intuition behind this is the fact that the player faces a lot of the times faces a lot of options for trading, but they can only end this turn in one way. While ending the turn in Settlers of Catan is quite important. It's a very important strategic decision to make. So that's where the intuition came from. Encoding using types, it also provides us to create this abstraction over the full action description, and that's why we're able to actually learn anything using that simple method that we have presented. Of course, this idea can be extended and you can use a neural network, but it was just to prove a point that having a simple method with these ideas included in it can defeat an agent that uses a neural network just learning over the actions. Yeah?
So with the trading, do you use planning to realize what resources you might need, then maybe plan what people might need, and then try to negotiate and then replan again based on the research you actually got from trading?
I see. So there are multiple aspects trading to discussion. First of all, trading, to describe a little bit more, trading is handled in the tree. It's just considered a normal action. You make an offer in the trees, and then you allow the opponent to choose if they want to accept or make a counter offer or reject. So this is done in the planning. Sorry?
Is that actually the opponent AI that's running?
In the forward simulation, this is you, but because we are using decoupled DCT, we store the statistics for the other agents as well, and we have the same reasoning for the other agents. So this is self-play. During planning, it is essentially doing self-play. Now, once you've chosen what action to do next, if it is a trade, and you can make the trade, and it's probably going to, there is a chance, it's not probably, there is a chance that it will fail in the actual game environment. And that's the interesting aspect. I think if you have an opponent model, you might be able to understand a little bit better what trades will be rejected in the real world, in the real game. Now, the way that I'm handling this is by, I'm not replanning, I'm just taking all the trades, all the actions, I'm ranking them based on what the planning has given me in terms of how it evaluated them, and I'm executing trades until a different action has been chosen to be executed in the real game. This is to avoid replanning and getting into an infinite loop of like trading while the opponent rejects, and then you think that the same offer is the best one, and so on.
So I have one more question. So you mentioned there's sort of two issues that come up in multiplayer games of modeling. One is that I predict you to do something and I have the wrong model and then therefore I play incorrectly. But the other thing that can happen in your tournaments is that when you have two players, so if I'm testing my agent and I'm playing against two agents of a similar type, because they know how each other think, they can sort of implicitly collaborate and they can actually do better as a team than they would do if they were playing on their own against more variety of different agent types. And so I was wondering if you observed that sort of behavior in your experiments.
Yes, so there is no collaboration happening between, no explicit collaboration happening between the players. However, the way that we are running these experiments, so even in these results, when I pointed out that the uniform agent is able to defeat our best agent, what we observed is that our agent has been biased towards playing development cards a little bit too much, and that's a very scarce resource. It's a very good play, especially in the partially observable version of the game,
present the speaker. It ends our morning session. We'll come back this afternoon for a session on learning. And there were some questions earlier. I did some look and see that a number of the restaurants that were closed this morning have opened up. And so there should be still some lunchtime options available. Did you have something to add to that?
That was what I was going to say.
Okay, so